Good morning. I'm Joel Whitehead, the Executive Vice President of the International Propeller Club. The International Propeller Club is a worldwide organization dedicated to the maritime industry and all aspects. Our membership consists of all aspects of the maritime industry, everything from blue water sailors to admiralty lawyers, waterfront operators, anything that deals with maritime transportation. We're very lucky to have with us today Carl Bentzel, who is going to speak to us. He is currently the president of the National Association of Waterfront Employees. Carl's an American attorney and political advisor who served formerly on the Federal Maritime Commission. He was nominated by President Trump in 2019, and he served until 2024. Carl earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from St. Lawrence University, a Juris Doctor degree from the University of Alabama Law School, and a Master of Laws from the Tulane Admiralty Law Institute at Tulane University in New Orleans. Before serving on the Federal Maritime Commission, Carl was a professional staffer in both chambers of the United States Congress, and that's where I was able to meet and work with him when he was in the Senate. He also worked as vice president for the DCI Group, a public relations firm, and established his own consulting services company, Bentzel Strategies. Right now, he is newly in his job since last year as president of the National Association of Waterfront Employees, which is the voice of the maritime terminal operators and stevedoring industry. Welcome, Carl.
Hello, Joel. Nice to see you again, my old friend. What Joel didn't tell you is I believe he helped sponsor an award that I received from the U.S. Coast Guard for civilian service, meritorious service, public service, which is something that I hold in great honor. During my work with the Coast Guard in Congress. So it's great to see you again, Joel, of course. Uh, in addition to Washington, D.C., when we run into each other. Propeller Club's just a great organization. I think I've had numerous opportunities to speak all over the United States to propeller clubs and have enjoyed the interaction. Really, it's the leading economic focal point for most of the port cities, from the steamship lines to the trucking companies and the railroad industry employers and employees that work, the longshoremen that work there. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm working on with the National Association of Waterfront Employers, a little bit about my association, marine terminal operators, the issues that we have, where I see things going in the future, the challenges, and there's a lot of issues going on in Washington, D.C. But as Joel mentioned, I'm the president of the National Association of Waterfront Employers. Those are companies that, as I say, do business at U.S. ports. My member companies, I think we're over 60 members now. We encompass probably over 95% of the containerized trade operating in the United States. A majority of our nation's break bulk commodities and almost all cruise ship passenger services operating out of U.S. ports. I like to say we really are the hub to the nation's supply chain and probably the most vital instrument that delivers our nation's supplies. And we are dependent as a nation on international trade to an extent that I don't believe the average American would even conceive. But it is an incredibly important industry that furnishes retail goods, export services for U.S. exporters, manufacturers, service industries, and really um, uh, is maybe one of the most integral elements to our economy that people have never heard of or paid much attention to. But I thank those of you that are in the industry for your services and what you've done. Um, as Joel mentioned, I was nominated and served as a commissioner on the Federal Maritime Commission during the pandemic. I thought I would be playing golf on Fridays and could go into work a little bit later on Mondays. But I immediately jumped into probably the most historic time ever at the Federal Maritime Commission as we wrestled with immense increases in volumes of cargo coming in as the economy adjusted to pandemic realities, and I had a firsthand basis of seeing the impacts of congestion, which largely created the inflation that we have today and that we're suffering with. So it was interesting during the pandemic, early on in the pandemic. Congress passed legislation to assist those industries that were impacted. I believe they gave $120 billion to the aviation and transit industries. Uh, and those industries essentially lay fallow for 2 years. I think they were operating at about 10 to 15% of their usual capacity. The maritime industry got $4 million from the federal government in that same bill, and had increases of up to 30% containerized import increases during that time frame, and worked. And our workers, our longshoremen workers, worked heroically through the pandemic alongside trucking and railroad and other operators that serve our port system to really sustain the nation's economy. So it was a pleasure, honor, and it really was able to crystallize the importance of the maritime transportation system in its totality, from the carriers to my terminal operators. To the longshoremen that work there, truckers, railroad interests, but it's an immense industry, and it's immensely challenging to balance the different aspects of need. A marine terminal operator works with their customers, the steamship lines, the ocean carriers, to bring in cargo. We manage and handle the cargo on their behalf, and it's disseminated in part to railroads. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars in railroad equipment at most U.S. ports, and also through the trucking networks that supply the nation's system of supply and supply chain. Um, the challenge, as Joel mentioned, I've been here for a while. I've got white hair. I've done this for a long time. But when I started, I did an authorization hearing for the Federal Maritime Commission, and there were 6 million containers, TEUs, handled through U.S. ports the first year that I was there, which was 1990. The last year that I left the Federal Maritime Commission was a year and a half ago. There were 38 million TEUs that were transported through the system. So the growth is astronomical, and really uh, will continue. The U.S. Consumes products from all over the world in every aspect of our economic growth and our GDP. So it's a necessity to have a good system of transportation. So the terminal industry is challenged because in the United States we're actually a little bit different from some of our foreign counterparts in that we have quite a few ports and terminals operating at those ports throughout the nation, maybe 20 major port complexes that are used, which is an advantage, but it's also a challenge in that the resources that might be allocated to a more highly regulated system of port usage, such as in Europe and in China and other places, is left to a more diffused system of support. So, so our ports were ports first, and then there was a little town, and then there was a city, and then there was a large urban area, and now most of our port areas house up to the millions of people there, and the priority for those living in those areas is not necessarily continual support for maritime transportation, but rather quality of life issues. So we wrestle with, as an industry, how are we going to accommodate the growth in a way that will be acceptable, but still allow us to handle uh, um, the volumes of trade that continue to come in. So we have to balance the needs to move things as rapidly as possible in some areas with environmental mitigation, electrification, for instance, and getting new equipment and replacing existing equipment. In the ports of LA Long Beach, for instance, it's projected that most every single piece of equipment used by terminals and the movement of over 18 million TEUs generated from that port complex will probably have to be replaced by 2035. So we face immense challenges with that. We're also reliant on our service providers, our chassis companies, our railroads, our trucking lines that we work with to have a system of movement that works not only on the port side coming in, but on the shore side leaving the terminals. And so we really have to be in balance to continue freight fluidity and to mitigate any impacts. But our nation relies in just-in-time delivery, and I believe sometimes they talk about the internet services and what it's meant. I believe the underpinning for growth in the potential of the use of internet and communication services is the ability to match that with intermodal movement speeds. So you can get cargo from anywhere in the world in a relatively short period of time uh, to be used most efficiently in whatever your process is. Um, uh, uh, so so we're facing challenges and accommodating growth. So I say for my association, we're looking at how to get to where we need to be in 2040. And the challenges are unique to each terminal. Once you've seen a terminal, you've seen a terminal, and we have break bulk, we have ro-ro terminals for automobiles, we have liquid bulk terminals, grain terminals on the Mississippi River, container terminals that handle pretty much everything, uh, cruise passenger terminals. So they all have different needs, requirements, and services and infrastructure. So I have lots of different issues that can come up pertaining to the safe operation of movement through our terminal system, and so we'll see. I think there is focus right now in the United States on the system of delivery. It's been apparent since the pandemic that it's more important than we realized, and so there is a reassessment of our place in policy, and so we have a number of issues impacting us on the federal side, and the federal government regulates our shipping industry, our terminal industry, and so we pay attention to what happens in Washington. I think the big challenge is the trade negotiations and also USTR trade actions against China for maritime dominance. Um, the challenge has been uh, the PRC has engaged in practices that have been reviewed by the United States trade representatives. And also, when I was a commissioner, frankly, I looked at these issues, and government action has contributed to economic dominance in a lot of segments of the maritime industrial base, including cargo handling equipment, ship-to-shore cranes, and equipment used in servicing the maritime trades. And so we are under threat of penalty as a result of the findings of the U.S. government, which I can't disagree with. Um, but they make it very difficult for our industry moving forward, specifically with respect to, for instance, ship-to-shore cranes. We have penalties that are being assessed potentially next year on new ship-to-shore cranes from China with a 100% tariff penalty. Uh, that market, the market in China of ship-to-shore cranes, is 97% of the world's market. So we are facing uh, the next few years with some level of concern and trepidation as a result of that, and some of the issues related to trade imbalance in general, and trade policy. But how do we overcome some of those? So we are working with the administration to get some incentives, to get a way to be able to get the best equipment in place and to service our shipping industry in the future. So that's a work in progress, but we're working in Washington, D.C. with our legislators to try to craft some policy that will allow us to be positioned to expand, to accommodate the trade that's coming in, to get the best equipment in place, to have the best workforce, best trained workforce, and the safest work environment that we can do. And that's the target. But there are significant challenges, both with respect to our own government's policies and with international events. And so the other of issues that are affecting our industry greatly is recently the war in the Persian Gulf. As I mentioned, terminals are connected, so we have to have the ability to take the cargo from ship to shore. We have to manage it while in our yard and position it for the next delivery, be it rail or trucking or temporarily holding it or transshipping it and providing it to another service provider for service work. So there's many different uh, potential impacts on our industry that can affect fluidity and the ability to move. So we are seeing challenges right now getting fuel to some of our ocean carrier customers who are very important to us. And so we're seeing the reliability of service being challenged right now. So potential slowdowns in the market, equipment that is sometimes used in foreign destinations to get cargo here is not arriving with the same frequency and pace. And so the challenge of overcoming some of the dislocation that occurs in the Persian Gulf will increasingly be felt to our industry moving forward. And we wrestle with that. But this past year, despite some tariff issues related to the imposition of tariffs, was actually not that bad a year. We continued to be able to move cargo through the system. There was fluidity in the movement, and so we continue to work at a local level. Um, with our industries to make sure that we can do the best job doing that. And I will tell you, the Propeller Club is one of the venues where so many of our members and service providers interface and talk about issues about how to make each individual facility or each port complex work better together, so that dialogue that can be fostered is necessary, and it's a if I could mandate it, I would, but I can't. But the industry is continually working to make sure their partners are advised as to what's going on from their perspective, and that policies are formulated the right way to make sure it's as easy as possible for everyone to do business. Um, I have worked in this industry for 35 years, and I have never seen a time frame where our issues are in in such high uh, importance, be it terminals in Panama or shipping assets in the Persian Gulf or trade actions against Chinese maritime dominance on the logistics side. But it's remarkable to me. Uh, I see it as an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. So I'm always happy to be able to talk to organizations like the Propeller Club, who genuinely care about the health and welfare of the industry. But I expect that there will be major policy legislation that will be as important as anything that we did in the United States since 1936, the Merchant Marine Act of 1936, and a sincere desire in rebuilding our industrial base. As I said, our terminals are in good shape. I mean, we handled 30% increases of cargo during the pandemic, and that's a testament to the hard work of the longshoremen that are working at our ports and the companies that I represent, and their ability to overcome these volumes. But I don't think there are too many industries that could say they did this during the pandemic and sustained our nation economically. It really was because we were able to deliver the goods that we were able to continue to get through the pandemic and get to some level of normalcy. So, Joel, I know we've got a bunch of people that are want to talk about the issues, and I'm happy to talk about them, specific issues or generic issues or general issues. And so, happy to talk to your folks.
Okay, great. I've got several questions from them. So let me first off just emphatically agree with you that the American public really, before the COVID, really did not understand the great importance of our port operations and the whole maritime industry. But suddenly they became, when they saw those 120 some ships off of Los Angeles, Long Beach area, and they weren't getting their stuff in from all their places. They ordered Amazon and everybody. They started to realize something about this great industry. And I think that that's very true that most of the public is not aware of the great opportunities for a place to work is in this industry because it's not going to disappear, even during a great thing such as that. So yeah, it's very important. What do you think are the most pressing workforce challenges facing waterfront employers today?
So we have some challenges that we work with our industry on technology, implementation of the next generation of technology at the port complex. Some of that is most of it's governed by the collective bargaining process. So I defer to that process itself. But we will have to at certain port complexes, for instance, LA Long Beach, there's just no room. to build to accommodate volumes that are coming in. So we'll have to be more efficient with the space that we have. So how to get the type of equipment in that allow our employees to more efficiently use these complexes. So for these large urban complexes, it's the most efficient use of our workforce and the ability to get supplementary technology into to be able to move forward. And other places that are building, it's how do you get the right infrastructure in place to allow the workforce to generate new volumes. The fastest growing port per capita, and it's been a couple of years since I've looked at it, is Mobile, Alabama, because of some investment that's been done on APMT and Maersk and the state and the railroad, CSX railroad, and so there the issues are just getting Baltimore, the Port of Baltimore is a growing port. New Orleans, you have a new terminal, so it's really how do you harness the next equipment at these growing terminals. So you have different challenges everywhere you are that are a little bit different. But I'd say they're all related to maximizing that individual area. I also represent operating ports, and so they function as a port authority, but also do maritime operations as a terminal operator. And they have different challenges. So the challenge changes on where you are and what terminal you are and what port you are. And they're a little bit different, but the biggest challenge is how to adjust to what these volume increases are going to be in a way that allows you to maximize the use of those facilities going forward.
Um, let's turn to a little different issue. Decarbonization of our industry is a big, big issue, and there's an international goal to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Now, ship owners are struggling with, what do we do? What fuels should we use? How do we how do we transform our shipping part of the industry? But at the terminal side, how can terminals begin to make sure that there are fuels available in their ports when they're not quite sure what the ships are going to do?
This is something that we haven't looked at enough, Joel, in my view. We're going from one fuel source, bunker fuel, high and low sulfur diesel, to maybe four or five. So we may be 30 years down the line uh, looking at vessels choosing their ports based on fuel availability as opposed to just being able to get there and to be able to operate. So this is a really good question, and it's one that we really haven't addressed. And I would say that we're very concerned if the carriers are our customers, so we need them there. So I think it's a combined effort to look at that, and it's compounded by we are having our own carbon emission reductions implementation at the terminal side. So I mentioned that LA Long Beach has committed to the local population that the port and terminal plexes at that port would be carbon neutral by 2035, even earlier. So we're buying all new equipment, and we have to replace everything there. There's been some enhancements that have already been done, but it's replacing an immense amount of infrastructure, and there will be new fuel sourcing that. So, in addition to ships coming in that might have different fuel sources, you're looking at us potentially also looking at different fuel sources and the surrounding population as well. So this is something I think is a worthwhile endeavor for the entire industry to look more closely at what will be the fuel sources necessary for the entire system and surrounding populations in these port complexes in the United States in 2040, and how do you minimize that impact with policy changes going forward to make sure that it's as easy to transition as possible.
I wonder, our industry is obviously it's an international industry. And, the United States can't just, even if we could decide on one way of doing things, we can't mandate it throughout the world. So are you engaging with other international organizations and ports and discussing this?
Yes, we as a matter of fact, there's less than perhaps other industries. Of course, we're very connected to our ocean carriers. A number of my companies are subsidiaries or affiliates with ocean carriers. So, of course, we work closely with the World Shipping Council. On mutual policy issues. In the United States, most of the terminals are either terminals owned by companies affiliated with steamship lines or independent companies that manage a number of ports and terminals in the United States, and uh, and and uh, and also uh, port authorities that are operating ports as well. So those are the three categories. For the most part, we're localized. We can't move my terminal, so some of the international issues are less important to us. Um, and for the most part, the terminals that are operating in the United States tend to be affiliated with policy related to the United States locations. So, but on the other hand, we are part of the international shipping community and world, and so we're affected by all of those issues. So we probably should do a better job, but we have enough just with Washington, D.C. and federal policy. So I think, going forward, we're going to work with all of the international terminal operators and carriers to foster the best policy. But we are physically located in jurisdictions in the United States, so a lot of our issues emanate as a result of that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, I've commented to several audiences over the last 5, 6 months that I've never heard an administration say the word maritime or shipping as much as in the last year. And it's truly possibly a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us. And just a few weeks ago, the administration issued the Maritime Action Plan, and I'm just wondering, it, in that plan or in your own mind, what federal policies would you like um, to change to strengthen Americans' maritime competitiveness?
So I think we definitely will continue to need federal grants for support for infrastructure, PIDP grants. The president has been actually very forthcoming supporting that. He proposed an additional 500 million in funding to 500 million that was there, so $1 billion. So we're asking for legislation to include dedicated sourced grant funding for my industry for infrastructure enhancements in the tune of $1 billion a year. We are looking at the ability to create tax-deferred IRAs for reinvestment and equipment at terminals. So we have legislation that was included in the map as a recommendation to expand CCF accounts, which are maritime accounts, for to allow us to purchase domestic cargo handling equipment. And I believe the third element that we're going to need is we're going to need help rebuilding an industrial base for cargo handling equipment in the United States. The decision to eliminate the use of Chinese equipment in the cargo handling segment means that we have to develop and there are many companies in the United States that have cargo handling equipment and are very competitive. Uh, but in some of the larger yard and ship to shore cranes markets, it's a very small pool of competitors that are out there and available for future growth. So we will need help to develop a market here. And so we're looking for incentives to help the industry participants to grow into the United States and to have an opportunity to compete for the first time in this market in the absence of Chinese. But it will take effort. So those are the three major issues that we're looking at with respect to that. Anything that they can do on maritime industrial base empowerment zones or incentives to co-locate other maritime services and shipbuilding and construction, yeah, and provide incentives across a broad base. We are owners of property in a lot of instances up and down the coast. And so strengthening shipbuilding and U.S. flag operations and everything else is something we support as an industry because it will help us. Many of the people that worked at terminals, worked at steamship lines and companies there, and went through the State Maritime Academy systems or Kings Point or Coast Guard Academy, and are now working for our industry. So growth of the industrial base helps us out in general, and so we're supportive of that. But we will need some help uh, as part of the legislation, as part of that, and it has identified logistics support as part of the system that we want to develop as the maritime industrial base. So we'll work it as we go through the legislative process to get support for that.
Right. Your membership, they deal with ships coming in and out of ports. They deal with rail. They deal with the trucking industry. They deal with state and local governments. I mean, you're in the middle of everything. How do you coordinate with longshore labor and carrier port authorities federally? How do you manage to coordinate with all these people?
It's a lot of work. There is an apparatus that's there. So, for instance, we have organizations on the East Coast, PMA and USMX on the East Coast, excuse me, PMA on the West Coast, that administer the collective bargaining agreements between labor and management. And so there's a lot of work that goes into that, and that's safety functions, and our companies continually sort of have to work on the interface to the surface modes. I don't think anyone understands how much investment a terminal has in its own railroad infrastructure, perhaps more than the railroad industry itself. I don't know, but I think that at these big ports, maybe 20% of their infrastructure costs would be generated towards railroad infrastructure because you get rail in, you get a lot of cargo out, and keep the port fluid and project cargo outbounds. So it's not just New York City region or New Orleans region; it's the entire United States. So we work continually with the service industries, the industries, the intermodal industries that we work with, and then largely through the collective bargaining process on safety issues with our longshoremen. And so it's in place. I would say in these large, huge urban port complexes, New York and LA, Long Beach, it's a little bit different and difficult because of the amount of players and actors there, the population base. And so probably more focus on that. You get to a smaller port, it's a more succinct group of people that we work with. Yeah, and you probably, I think you were with the Coast Guard when we were doing this, but we worked on the Maritime Transportation Security Act. And one of the things that we done is done a survey at the port terminal at the port of New York, and we found out that there were 118 federal, state, and local municipal agencies that had authority to interface directly with a marine terminal operator. So it's an immense amount of responsibility to a whole wide range of partners. So it's a continual effort to reach out and talk about, the approaches to the terminal and whether or not they're jeopardizing safety by not being maintained adequately, or internally with OSHA on what the standards are for heat and taking care of our employees' safety and welfare. So it's just a continual work, but there is a mechanism out there. And sometimes it takes people like the Propeller Club, they all know because they're part of this ecosystem in general that contributes to it. But it is there, and it's present, and it has many different actors that are involved in making recommendations and trying to make things work better.
Yeah, it seems that number 118, it's a giant number, and I can only imagine dealing with all of them, but it's a reality. It's just amazing. Let me ask you this again, or something related. Our ports, and therefore your membership,
Mhm.
are really in competition with other ports, but not only within the United States, but with in the world. So,
Mhm.
what is your organization doing to help its members remain competitive against these rapidly modernizing foreign ports?
Yeah. So, I mean, the primary challenge for us is probably Mexico and Canada. Canada probably a little bit more, and they have different policies that govern them. And while I I'm friendly with Canada, I sort of enjoy, in some respects, the Canadians have 5 ports, and they're given a grant to operate as an international port under the authority of the king, and so there's sort of restrictions on other Canadian ports from being ports. I have many different ports in the United States, and we've taken it. Actually, it's in the Constitution of the United States, protection to allow states to develop their ports in the Constitution, and that gets to the issue of, the other nations can take steps to support and promote. The Canadian ports, in particular, are looking at business in the United States. That's what they want to get,
Yeah,
that's where they want to grow. And there's just more business down here. So we're supportive of efforts to equalize some of these trade dislocations that could be caused by the imposition of U.S. policies, and allow cargo diversion. So, harbor maintenance tax equalization, and if there's any tariffs, to say that you can't just put it on rail and ship it in without the same assessment. So we're supportive of doing something in this area in the maritime uh, action plan implementation, and support that. Uh, Mexico is a little different. There are challenges of operating in Mexico on issues related to their control and crime and other issues that make it more challenging. But we want to create an environment that does not create an incentive not to use U.S. ports, and so I think that's where our focus is on behalf of my members.
great. And if anybody out there is listening from Canada, we really want to have some new Propeller Club members from Canada in ports in Canada. And I know they want to do business with us, and we would love to have that dialogue within the Propeller Club. So,
Yeah, no, we there's a lot of cross-border pollination, and we actually as an organization, have been trying to keep in contact with our colleagues north of the border. But I do represent the U.S. interests, so that's my job. So
Sure.
I go where my voters are.
Right. Let us wind up then with one last question, and you have touched on this several times in a way, but how can organizations like ours, the International Propeller Club or the U.S. Navy League and other port community groups best support your mission? Because supporting your mission is going to support our mission and America's economy.
Yeah. So, active propeller clubs, reaching out more broadly to promote, as when I go to a propeller club meeting, because my companies are the companies that manage the operations at the port, they're involved with all the trucking companies and all the. So sometimes they hate us, sometimes they love us, and so, but we are mutually dependent, codependent. So utilizing your advocacy efforts to make it more. I want to soften the public up by telling them, hey, you can stay on the internet as long as you want, and you can press the button over and over and over again. But if you're not shipping it through our terminals, it doesn't matter how many times you hit the button or communicate that you want something because it's not going to get there. And so, as long as you're not talking about an idea or communication service, if you really want to get something tangible, good, you have to support our efforts to make this work better. And so the Propeller Club is the venue for all around the United States for our activities as ports and terminals. And so the Port Authority works it hard. Our terminals are all members of the Propeller Club Association. And so if the Propeller Club itself can increasingly make the public aware of how critical it is to continue shipping services in a way that we can all benefit from. That would be the. I just want a stronger propeller club. That's and more active propeller club because they're saying the right things already. It's just saying it louder and making arguments that resonate. I remember the biggest boost we got was when Jimmy Fallon was talking about the supply chain and logistics on late night TV because people were paying attention to us. And so I think if they pay attention to us, they'd find out it's a pretty good story. There's pretty good jobs here. They're high paying. There's a lot of opportunity to do things. To go to sea for uh, 8 years and experience the world and work at a very high level, managing incredibly complex equipment and engineering, and at our terminals. It's just amazing to me every time I get into a terminal and see the complexity of their operations, and they're all different. And my terminal operators, their management is always thinking, can we do this a little bit differently to make sure this works better and we can get cargo moved more fluently. And we're really sort of buffeted by forces outside of our control, and we adjust to those as we can. But it's a great industry to be part of, and I think we need more awareness that we're a critical, essential component. I think we are the most critical, essential component of our economy that exists singularly because we affect everyone else. If it's rare earth minerals, it's probably going to be put in a container and shipped there or put on a ship and shipped in. And if it's, components that go in iPhones, they're all shipped around the world and all this product is shipped. So, I estimate that 85% of everything that we touch has more than one component from someplace else. And 90% of our world's trade goes by sea, as you know. And so let's pay attention to it. Look at the Persian Gulf. I don't know if the United States wanted to put our army into to Iraq. We could supply them for that long a period of time, and we're the United States. So, so you still need the bread and butter that makes everything a little bit more moist and chewable, and that's our industry.
No, you're exactly right. And that's what makes me want to be involved in this industry because I always call it's the world's essential industry. It really and truly is. So,
Yeah, I mean,
Carl,
maritime law was the first commercial law that existed, and they exported it all out. But somewhere down the path of history, they've lost focus on us a little bit. Maybe we're uh, too isolated from public view. People get on an airplane and use an airplane, but freight doesn't tell about how their transit was. Uh,
yeah,
and so maybe that's the challenge that we have.
yeah, you're exactly right. And that's the voice we have to have. So, Carl, I want to thank you. This is Mr. Carl Bentzel, President of the National Association of Waterfront Employers. I think we've had a great discussion here. I want to remind the audience too that we will be posting this webinar on our YouTube channel. Just look for the International Propeller Club YouTube channel. We'll get a lot more visits on that, I'm sure. And Carl, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Joel. Good to see you again.